All the big prospect workouts are done. What do we make of the Hornets not releasing any videos for any of the prospects? Plus, we'll lead off with another Jake Fisher soundbite on Locked On Hornets.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. That always includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson, the long hair, the locks flowing in the wind. You can check him out on his substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And you can listen to me, Walker Mail, every weekday on WFNZ from 12 to 3 p.m. So we have the workouts completed. Brandon Miller. We do know at least Brandon Miller was in town, Doug. They didn't release a video, but we do know that he released a Snapchat where it was him on a plane, and then it gave you the mark and said, yep, in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we know he was here.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited for Brandon Miller and Scoot. Apparently some Thompson Twins were here. I'm so excited. I haven't seen any video. I have to take their word for it. I haven't seen them work out. We didn't hear them talk. So yeah, I don't know how I'm supposed to get like super excited about it, but hey, they're here. Great.
All right. Yeah. So now they're gone. I guess, I don't know if Brandon Miller is still here, but they could be gone. We do know that they worked out. At least we think we know that. All right, let's go to the soundbite first before we start to talk a little more about that, because I saw Brian Windhorst on Get Up yesterday, Doug, and at the very end of the show, they were moving on. They were moving past the Denver Nuggets winning the championship. And he said, quote, "There's going to be big drama with picks 2 and 3 on NBA draft night, if not on draft night itself, in the days leading up to it, because we don't have a feel for Charlotte and we don't have a feel for the Blazers." So there's Brian Windhorst, who is comedically all-knowing, doing the whole this thing with the Utah Jazz last offseason. What does that mean, right? So Windy is all-knowing. Jake Fisher's been pretty good at this too, and we talked with him on Friday. As we mentioned yesterday, here's Jake Fisher on Weston Walker discussing the validity, or at least the real value in mock drafts having Brandon Miller going number 2.
Any mock draft and any person outside of Charlotte, and even in Charlotte, who tells you they know what the Hornets are going to do, they're jumping the gun a little bit early here. The Thompson Twins, I know, were in there yesterday. I think they're still working out and visiting today. They'll have both Brandon and Scoot in over the next couple of days. And I think after this franchise and their personnel get to figure out a little bit more about these guys up close, get to see them measure, get to interview them and have them in their building, have some meals with them, then I think we'll start to really have a true understanding. So anyone who's just slating Brandon Miller in at 2, I think that's probably like at best guesswork at this moment, and we'll have to see as things get closer if that starts to change.
We're almost a week out, June 22nd, right? It is the 14th as we stand here today. So very close to the NBA draft on Thursday night next week, Doug. And still nobody knows really what the Charlotte Hornets are going to do. Some people have said they think Brandon Miller is going to be the pick, but it's all guesswork, as Jake said. They don't have a feel for Charlotte, as Brian Windhorst said. And so here we are, still not knowing what the Hornets are going to do.
And that's the way they want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want it that way because they are probably still entertaining lots of offers for that second overall pick. Because honestly, it's a different situation, I guess, than if they were the 3rd pick, for example. And you don't want people to know what you're going to do. Specifically, if you're Portland, you don't want Charlotte to know who you like because you don't want them to take that player. It's not that situation with Charlotte. San Antonio is going to take Victor Wembanyama. The choice is all Charlotte's, whether they want Scoot or Brandon or one of the Thompson Twins, or they want to trade the pick. But it's all about trade leverage at this point. And we've already seen, some rumors floating out there with New Orleans and Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram and all of these names. But I can't imagine those are the only names. I think people are super excited about this draft. I think front offices are super excited about this draft. And a few of them are going to fall in love with a particular player, whether that be Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson. And, the Hornets have to drive up that price as much as possible, because if they trade this pick, Walker, a pick that I think could, change this Hornets organization for the next 10 years for the better, could vault them into a similar situation that Denver has found itself in now, breaking a 47-year streak drought of no title, getting their first title. If they trade that pick, it has to be for a package that is so overwhelming that it convinces the entire fan base that they've done something right. Because this fan base is already skeptical at best, cynical at worst. And, if this front office, that may not even be the front office if this team sells, if this front office sells out the Charlotte Hornets by making a trade that maybe adds some value to the sell price but doesn't do them any long-term good, I mean, that would be devastating for the fan base.
Well, and you mentioned the asset here. I did see this conversation. I think Nada got involved in the convo. He brought up Eric Dampier's contract from a while back. The second iteration.
That is an extraordinary name.
Yes. So the question was, is this number 2 pick the most important asset, at least in the Bobcats / Hornets era, that they've ever had? So you've had the second overall pick before. You had it right from the get-go with Emeka Okafor. You had it with MKG. I don't know if there is one that's more important than this second overall pick, where you have 2 guys and you get to pick between both of them that are considered second overall pick worthy in Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller, and a deep draft where there's always been one guy that's always going to go number 1 in Wemby, but we had the whole Scoot would be number 1 in a lot of other drafts. Brandon Miller played so much better. I don't know if there's been another asset that would get this kind of attention. Like, I heard Bobby Marks on Mac and Bone on WFNZ yesterday, and he was saying how, I don't know if I would make that second overall pick for Zion or just Brandon Ingram. You'd have to add something else to it. I mean, so it's funny, Zion and Brandon Ingram aren't enough by themselves, which have a lot of value, even with the injury history and even with Brandon only being a one-time All-Star only. This second overall pick, it might be as big an asset that this team has ever had.
Well, it's bigger because of the situation, right? The Bobcats at that point were so bad that they needed to make the pick for the future. Mm-hmm. The Hornets are not as bad. Their record wasn't great last season, but we all know the context around that, injury, so on and so forth, the Miles Bridges situation. They're going to add talent this offseason just by virtue of guys getting healthy and possibly bringing back Miles Bridges. So I think that's what makes the trade intrigue a little bit saucier, is that this team is primed to make some moves, and it's just, do they value, those assets coming back more than they value the opportunity to take Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller? But what I take from the Fisher sound that you had there is essentially what I've been saying all along. No one on the outside knows anything. Mitch Kupchak's comments right after the lottery really, I think, set this agenda of fit and vaulted Brandon Miller from 3 to 2. I just believe that in my bones. And I also believe that Scoot is the better prospect because although he may be undersized for the 2-guard position, I think his length, his athleticism, his ability to really get by, I think, anyone. I mean, his ability to drive to the basket is incredible, that burst of speed that he shows off. And look at these workout videos that he's releasing. I mean, this guy is strong. And I think he's strong enough to carry a Hornets offense that still, even with LaMelo, can still stand to have some power. Needs a go-to scorer. LaMelo, I think, is a go-to playmaker, absolutely. But they don't have a go-to scorer on this roster. Scoot Henderson can be that.
Yeah, and we'll see what they do on draft night. We're so close. And let's talk a little bit more about the lack of workout videos coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Doug called it an anti-move. The Hornets not releasing any anti-fan move, I should say. The Hornets have not released any workout video, be it the Thompson Twins, Scoot Henderson, and Brandon Miller. Is this history repeating itself, or is this something new just with the high-profile guys? We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you guys about PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, and you can pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available, and they offer projections on really any sport you watch. The NBA, the WNBA, the NFL, MLB, men's and women's college basketball, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, so many more. Just go check it out for yourself. You can download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks gives you $100. If you deposit $50, they give you $50. You get the idea. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. More Locked On Hornets coming up next.
This is Locked On Hornets.
And would I have liked to see a few more shards? No, I would not have.
Only on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
So we're all done with the workouts here, Doug. Thompson Twins Friday, Scoot Henderson Sunday, Brandon Miller Tuesday, and that'll be it for the high-profile guys that you would think are in real consideration at number 2, and even the Thompson Twins at number 2. It might be a little bit of a stretch. This is new, though. You did call it an anti-fan move, the fact that we can't get excited. We can't look at the highlights from the workouts from any of these high-profile prospects. We will have some more guys come in from the 27 to 41 range, but we don't have any video of the high profile ones. And we did last year, late lottery. So Mark Williams, we got to see some of that video, and we've seen this before, but this is something new for the Hornets, I guess, because they are up at the number 2 territory for the first time since MKG.
It is anti-fan. It's not allowing fans to get excited by any of these prospects. The Thompson Twins, Scoot, Brandon Miller, that camps have divided. Not really for the Thompson Twins. I mean, there are the advocates of the Thompson Twins, but I think it's pretty clearly Scoot or Brandon Miller. And camps have developed, and you haven't allowed either camp to really get excited about these players. And I wonder if it is calculated, if there is some idea of, hey, we might trade this pick, so there's no reason to give false hope to fans by really highlighting either of these players, because we might completely go a different direction. We're not sold on actually making this pick. I think there could be some of that going on for sure. This is not normal for this organization. As you said, they have brought guys in before, and not only, they've invited media in to talk to these guys. Because to me, it's not about seeing them, because we see all these private workout videos and they're, one on none. It's not really anything you can, I think, really legitimately glean from these videos, and the little bits and pieces that the media get when they invite them in at the very end of the workout. Again, there's nothing you really glean from that. It's the ability to talk to these guys. And I think specifically Brandon Miller, he didn't do very well with his media session at the combine. People were not satisfied with his answers. And so another opportunity to talk to the media, I think, would have been valuable. And then for Scoot to make his case in the building, for Scoot to make his case that he could work alongside LaMelo, that would have been a great opportunity for fans to hear that as well. And so we didn't get any of that. And I think it's super disappointing. But, now we move on, and the Hornets have a big decision to make.
Well, yeah, and what's unfortunate, too, is we would see some of these guys last year. We'd get the Zoom access. You could phone in via wherever you were. You didn't have to at least go to the Spectrum Center, and you could get some of those sound bites as well. And that's not even open. So access a little more limited this year with these pre-draft workouts.
Yeah, and a lot of these players in the past, when the Hornets have been in mid-lottery or late lottery situations, we've seen players scorn the Hornets and say, no, I'm not going to go work out for you. I'd like to be drafted a little higher, so I'm not going to work out for you. And now as an organization, you're in a situation where essentially everyone wants to work out for you, and you respond by not allowing anyone to talk to these guys, not allowing any media access. And, it's just extremely disappointing. I think it's Bush League. And, I hope if there is a new version of this front office in the future and they find themselves in a lottery situation, that they would understand that, there's PR to be gained here. I think, people in Charlotte want to get excited about the Charlotte Hornets. And I don't know that the organization really understands that fully enough, that there are people that want to get excited about all of this, and if they'll only be allowed to.
Well, you did ask if it was calculated. I don't think there's any doubt it's calculated. It would be weird to have workout videos for Jaime Jaquez and not the Thompson Twins.
Well, at least they didn't do it for Brandon Miller, and at least they didn't release Brandon Miller to the media and then didn't do Scoot, or vice versa. That would be ridiculous at that point. That would show their hand completely.
No, I wouldn't even know, to be honest with you. I'd be so tripped up by it. I wouldn't even know what to do with that information. It might seem so clear, but at the same time, it'd be like, wait, why are you doing this? Why are you releasing this video? I was paying attention to it though. I was hoping, please, Charlotte, don't release a Brandon Miller video. Don't release a Scoot and not a Brandon Miller. If you're going to call it off for all of these guys, then just do that. And so even for good measure, the Thompson Twins didn't even have a video released on them. I do wonder if there's any kind of reason for it being that they didn't have 6 guys in there. You know how the other workouts, it'll include a group of 5 or a group of 6. And these players had individual.
Yeah, that didn't
workouts.
stop Portland. Portland was fine with the single
Portland.
workout.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's an excuse. I'm trying to think if there was any other way. But yeah, it's definitely calculated when you ask that question.
I just thought of an interesting wrinkle if the Hornets do trade with the New Orleans Pelicans. And I don't know that we really talked about this yesterday. We talked about them wanting future assets, or us wanting them to acquire future assets if you pair it alongside Zion Williamson or Brandon Ingram. But one of those very short-term future assets could be the 14th overall selection, which New Orleans currently owns right now. And the Hornets would have the opportunity, most likely, if they're sitting at 14, to rectify a historical pain point for Hornets fans. They could draft a Kobe at 14. They could draft Kobe Bufkin, or is it Bufkin or Bufkin?
Oh, Bufkin, yeah.
Bufkin. Yeah, getting buff. They could draft a Kobe at 14 and rectify a little historical pain point. What do you think?
All right, so now maybe that sways you a little bit more into listening to New Orleans. We'll get to that in a moment. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Let's discuss the fallout of the trade rumors from Shams Charania saying that the Pelicans want to move up to draft Scoot Henderson. We've heard more from you on who you'd be most interested in if you were to engage in trade talks. We'll get to some of those poll results coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. All right, Doug, so we talked about it extensively yesterday. Shams dropped a pretty big report about the Pelicans being so interested in Scoot Henderson. They were looking to trade all the way up from number 14 to number 2 or number 3. And that is a huge jump for anybody, especially in the NBA draft, because in the NFL draft, it's a monster jump. We were discussing that with the Carolina Panthers moving from 9 to 1. In the NBA draft, when you have one player that can dramatically change your fortune, 14 to 1's crazy. So you have to have something valuable already on your roster, and the Pelicans do. They have Zion, who, despite the injury history, is a force when he's out there on the court and did play enough to at least get one All-Star appearance. Brandon Ingram, great numbers this past season, really good player. So both of those guys, you'd have to give up at least one of them in a potential trade. You asked the question on YouTube, if you had to engage in this trade, would you want Zion, Brandon Ingram, and for even good measure, CJ McCollum? Would you want either one of those players most to come back? Did CJ get any more people in his corner, Doug?
He's absolutely playing spoiler, and he's spoiling Zion Williamson in this poll. So we got up to 685 votes.
CJ McCollum, the libertarian, is that what he is?
He's the Green Party candidate.
Okay.
He is Jill Stein. He is ruining it for Zion Williamson, who is losing in this poll 48% to 45%. So it's close. And I think, honestly, if we had run this poll before all of his, social media drama, I don't know that it would. I don't know that Zion would have lost here. I do think that's scaring people in a particular way away from, and obviously it would have still been close because I think people would still be concerned about the injury history. That's all that's holding this back at this point, because you can't seriously say healthy Brandon Ingram over healthy Zion. Fully healthy Zion is an unstoppable force that, if paired alongside LaMelo Ball, can you imagine the LaMelo Ball to Zion connection? I mean, it's blowing my mind to think about. I wouldn't even know really how to evaluate it. It would be something so incredible. I would need to see it happen. But then I would be scared the whole time that either one of those players are going to get injured, because you're adding Zion and his injury history to LaMelo, who has developed a legitimate injury history of his own. I mean, this would be the most fragile team in the National Basketball Association. Everyone would be watching these games on absolute pins and needles, hoping that both of these guys could stay healthy.
I don't want that kind of anxiety.
I've been anxious this whole draft period. I'm ready for it to be over. I'm ready for June 22nd to get here. But then, if a trade ends up with Zion, that would be anxiety inducing. I think what wouldn't be anxiety inducing would be just doing the simple thing, not overthinking this, having this front office draft Scoot Henderson number 2 overall. And if I look at these comments, Walker, I didn't give that as an option. I think if I did, it would be the absolute leader in the clubhouse, because it's comment after comment from the sickos here that want the Charlotte Hornets to not worry about either one of these players and just go after Scoot. And I think, honestly, that's where I am. And the point I was making in the last episode was that I would want the trade package to be so overwhelmingly positive for the Charlotte Hornets that it only makes sense for the New Orleans Pelicans from the context of David Griffin loves Scoot Henderson and would do anything to acquire him. And it makes sense for the Charlotte Hornets because it's something you simply can't refuse. So that's Zion plus other players plus, draft assets. And people responded to that last episode saying, Doug's crazy. They'll never do that. That's the point. I want the package to be, oh my God, I can't believe New Orleans did that. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, take Scoot.
Right. Well, and I did see some Hornets fans divide this up into, if you're going to take Brandon Miller, then you would obviously lose the chance at that because you're going to move too far back in the draft. Even if you get 14 to have a chance at him. So would you make this move if Brandon Miller was the option here, right, for the Charlotte Hornets? Or what is it? Clearly you're not doing it if you want to take Scoot. But what about Brandon Miller? Would you just want to take Brandon Miller in that scenario, Doug? Or at that point, would you trade Brandon, in this case, for a Zion or a Brandon Ingram and whatever else you wanted to add in that package?
So for me, the reason why it's so overwhelming to take Scoot over, a trade package that would really only include Zion plus maybe a player and a pick. The reason I wouldn't do that over taking Scoot is that, Scoot's contract is going to be so favorable for the Charlotte Hornets over the next 4 to 5 years versus acquiring Brandon Ingram, whose contract runs out in a couple of years. So I guess that's favorable in that you can move him off the books. Yeah. You move him off the books, but you don't get the talent either if he moves on. And Zion Williamson, you've locked up 30 to 40 million over the next 5 to 6 years. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's favorable. But B, look, just Scoot, the person, is just so focused, so locked in. He's got a great team of people that mostly includes his family that are around him, guiding him. He believes that this is his place in the world, that basketball is what he was put on this earth to do, and not just play basketball, but achieve great things as a basketball player. Just every word that he says just exudes like this guy gets it. He's going to continue to get it. He's not going to get off track. He's going to move forward, and he wants to shepherd a team to the NBA Finals. I can't say the same thing for Zion Williamson at this point. I'd probably say the same thing for Brandon Ingram. I think he's motivated in that way, but I don't believe that he has the same ceiling of talent that a Scoot Henderson has. So I throw all that together and I say it's got to be Scoot. But I think Brandon has this big issue at Alabama that makes you go, God, is this guy focused? Is this guy gonna, is he gonna come into the NBA? Did he see the light? I don't want to ask. I don't have to ask that question with Scoot. I don't have to ask has he figured it out? Scoot's got it figured out.
Well, and with Brandon Miller, if the return is Zion, then okay, I'd be better. I'd feel a lot better taking that risk, even though it's still a risk. But also, my question too is if Brandon Miller turns into Brandon Ingram, that is a real possible outcome. And so do you just want to go ahead and get
it's like
one of like the 80 percentile outcomes, 90 percentile outcomes for Brandon Miller at 26 years old? You pay him after his 2 years left on his deal runs out and get rid of all the uncertainty and just get the finished product right now. Because at that point, yeah, I might go ahead and do that. You'd have to, the idea, the argument against it would be the rookie contract thing, but you also have to go through the growing pains that Brandon Miller would bring, and you could just get the finished product and pay for it right now. So if you get 85th, 90 percentile, I don't know, something like that, Brandon Miller already, then yeah, man, I'd probably go after Brandon Ingram in that scenario.
That's really interesting. It's kind of like Pokemon. Like, do you want to just evolve it to the third? Let's just go ahead and get Charizard. And instead
I don't
of
need to build the relationship that comes with getting the puppy. I don't need to do that.
I don't need. Let's just go ahead and evolve it up to, or maybe the analogy is you just want. I don't know what the second level of that Pokemon was, but you just want the second level.
Charmeleon, Doug, get it right. Yeah,
all right.
Charmeleon.
Maybe you just want Charmeleon. You could, because look, if you take, what was the first level?
Charmander.
I haven't played Pokemon. See, you're younger. This is why this makes sense.
Well, I was huge. The original 150, baby. Huge fan.
Yeah. So, maybe you go Charmeleon, and maybe if you take Brandon Miller, you've got a chance at a Charizard, but maybe he just stays in the first level. You don't know. So you go Charmeleon, and that's Brandon Ingram.
Yeah. So give me Charmeleon in that case, I think. Or just give me like borderline Charizard. Maybe Charizard without wings, but still a monster and a fiery tail.
And you get other assets. To me, that's what it can't be the package. I'm going to say it over and over again so that when if this trade actually happens, we can all come back and reference whether this was a good deal or not a good deal. It can't be focused around Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. There are players in the league now, star players in the league now, that I would say, okay, you can focus a deal around a number 2 pick around that player because they are a player such that there aren't those concerns with injuries. There aren't those concerns with maybe not being like championship focused that you would be willing to move the number 2 pick for. But that's not Brandon Ingram. And that's not Zion Williamson. And honestly, if the Hornets are truly, legitimately focused on taking a path that Milwaukee took to the finals, that Denver took to the finals, that Dallas, another small to medium-sized market darling that won an NBA Finals, if you're really interested in taking that path, then you have to do it through the draft. And so far, they've had a couple of draft hits and they've had a couple of draft misses. But so far, they don't have that Jokic. They don't have that Giannis. Maybe LaMelo this season, fully healthy, if he puts it all together, maybe he develops into that. But you've got a chance here with either Scoot or Brandon to find that player, and I think they should do that.
Yep, 100%. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen today. Make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Just follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Find your Blastoise.